Tim Cook takes a stance on encryption that could affect your civil liberties. Facebook invites you in but doesn't let you out, and a new way to control VR with your bare hands. All that and more on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com. Hi, everybody. It's time for our annual audience survey. We'd really like to hear from you. It helps us understand our audience better, know what you like and don't like, how you listen to the show. It also helps us tell advertisers what kind of people listen. But I promise you, your feedback is always kept personally anonymous. All you have to do is visit twit.tv/survey and let us know what you think. It'll just take a few minutes, and it'll help us make Twit even better. We really appreciate your support and any help you can give us. twit.tv/survey.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1451, recorded Wednesday, February 17th, 2016.
This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring? With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 100-plus job sites, including social networks, all with a single click. Screen, rate, and hire the right candidates fast. Try ZipRecruiter with a free 4-day trial now at ZipRecruiter.com/TNT.
And by Epson's new EcoTank printers. With Epson's line of SuperTank all-in-one printers, you can print thousands of documents without running out of ink. EcoTank is loaded and ready to print when you are. Visit Epson.com/EcoTank to find out more.
Hello and welcome to Tech News Today. This is the show where we talk about all the tech news with people who are passionate about technology. I am Megan Morrone.
And I am Jason Howell. Continuing this week, the March of Jasons continues. Mm-hmm. Although we don't actually have a Jason scheduled for tomorrow.
No.
Or Friday.
The March stops.
So the March stops
But we
here.
are grateful for this Jason today.
That's right, man. This landed in our lap like a present, a prize from above. Jason Snell from sixcolors.com. How are you doing, Jason?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to just helping out with the Jason contingent this week. It's important to fulfill your quota of Jasons.
I know. I think the next challenge is let's brainstorm tonight more Jasons for tomorrow and Friday, and then we can put the week of Jason behind us.
Okay, sounds good.
And maybe resurrect it at some point soon.
I think we have a Mike in there, which is second to the Jason in popularity.
Okay, we have a Matthew.
Just call him Jason.
Okay.
Yes,
we'll call everyone Jason.
All right.
All right. Well, let's get to our big story. Late yesterday, the United States District Court of California issued a court order insisting that Apple provide a signed image file that would allow the FBI to access the iPhone 5C belonging to the couple who killed 14 people in San Bernardino last year. Essentially, they want Apple to build a back door so they can use brute force to crack the password that's encrypting the phone without the delay that they would have now. Apple CEO Tim Cook responded with a letter to customers saying they would fight the court order and called for a public discussion over the implications in this case. So let's have this discussion now.
Let's do it.
Jason Snell, let's start. What exactly are they asking of Apple?
Well, basically, they want a custom version of iOS that turns off a couple of features. Now, Apple has said for a while now that it has this full disk encryption, and Apple can't get at that because it doesn't have the decryption codes, and that's still true. However, what the government wants and what the FBI and the Justice Department want is a special custom build of iOS that turns off two security features. One of them is the 10 tries and then I wipe my device feature, that you can turn on, where if somebody tries to put in your passcode 10 times and they fail all 10, it just erases your device. They want a version that turns that off. And then separately, they also want a version that lets you enter the passcode remotely from a remote device. And the idea there is they basically want to take this iPhone that one of the killers used, run this software update with this special software that has to be signed by Apple in order to be installed as a software update, turns off those features. They can plug it into a device and they can brute force unlock the phone and get access to everything on it by, literally if it's a 4-digit code on that phone, they would just plug it in and go, from 0000 all the way up to 9999 and find a way in. And that's what they want to compel Apple to do, is actually develop that modified version of iOS, provide them a signed image so that they can then install it on that phone and unlock and bypass the passcode.
I feel like a part of what I've read a lot of articles about this, by the way. We've all been reading all afternoon. But I feel like a part of this that maybe is getting, I don't know if it's if it's a lack of understanding of how the iPhone works under the hood or what it is. But a lot of people are pointing to this being, oh, well, if you let the cat out of the bag, then it's over. But the iPhone 5C, like there's specific stuff going on underneath that means that this particular workaround would only apply to this one device. Is that true?
Yeah, the 5C is essentially the same model as the old iPhone 5. And if you recall your iPhone models, the 5S introduced Touch ID. And along with Touch ID, it introduced this thing called the Secure Enclave, which is where your fingerprint metrics are stored. And it's got some other features, including the fact that the Secure Enclave, which is this, built in to the hardware, it has got a unique ID. And so from the 5S forward, there are three different things that you need access to in order to unlock an iPhone's encryption. You need the hardware ID that's on the device, the Secure Enclave access, and you need the passcode. And that would make this method impossible because the Secure Enclave actually has a lot of time delay stuff built into it that, basically after a few attempts to get the password from the Secure Enclave, it slows down. It's built to automatically slow down and prevent brute force attacks. But the 5C doesn't have that. So on that level, this is something that only is for the 5C and before. However, when people start talking about the slippery slope or about backdoors or things that are more broad, I think what they're talking about more is real world implications of the Justice Department and the FBI forcing a phone vendor like Apple to make modifications to provide them with a modified version of their operating system. And I think that's the big concern here, is not that this is a single use, but that this opens the door for more requests, for more uses of this technology, and for other court orders to force Apple and Google and other companies to modify the software on customers' devices.
And because this is kind of the first time that, at least in my understanding, the first time that a court is saying, we need you to code into your operating system a way around this. And that's why they're calling on the All Writs Act of 1789 to do it. It's basically, this does not exist in law right now, so therefore we're using this because we need access, essentially, in order to access that, the information underneath, we need you to ride around that. And that doesn't exist anywhere in law.
It seems a little outlandish, doesn't it? The idea that a magistrate judge from the Central District of California could basically instruct Apple to begin a software project and use its employees to build a custom build of software in order to unlock a single phone. I mean, again, I hate to go down the slippery slope arguments here, but at what point is it unreasonable to ask a software development company and an organization to task its engineers with doing special work for the government in order to fulfill the needs of a single case? That seems fairly unreasonable to me, but and a huge burden potentially on the software companies if a judge somewhere can be convinced by the FBI and the Justice Department to launch new projects that will benefit them using Apple's developers. It seems kind of far-fetched, but that's where we are right now. I mean, Apple is essentially saying they're going to appeal this, but there's been a court order that basically says Apple must task its developers to do this.
Okay, so what about the wording in the request itself? Like security expert Bruce Schneier said that the wording was so technically accurate that he thinks that Apple actually participated in the writing of this, and so that it would be more of we wouldn't get all caught up in all the technical aspects of it, but it would really be
that would be a direct request.
Yes, yeah,
that seems reasonable to me. That this was a conversation that's been going on, and that Apple was sort of negotiating, like, well, here's what we could do to limit our exposure. But this is a case that's working on two levels, right? This is working on the level of what is technically possible, and then there is the political level, which is Apple. Apple is concerned that this is a way in, that this is a case very specifically chosen by the FBI and the Justice Department to use to get public and political approval on their side among the people in the House and the Senate as well, to say, well, this is a terrorism case. This is they're dead. We want access to their phone, as a way to get a foothold to make things to make more requests later. And I think that on that level, I mean, that's where Tim Cook is coming from here, is that he's playing that game too. He views this request. I think Apple and Google and other tech companies are starting to view this request as being more about getting a foot in the door and making tech companies look bad and trying to push them around, and not about this specific case. Because yes, if you take it on face value, this does seem like a very carefully negotiated request for a single use OS update that will work on this single model to do this one thing. And as we've said on this show, it wouldn't even be applicable to future iPhone models because of the way the Secure Enclave works.
Except for the fact that the precedent is then set, and
Exactly.
oh, hey, when we need access, we can ask for it, or rather require it, because it's been proven already to work that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I totally agree that it's this case. I mean, they did this last month in California. There was the same thing about privacy. They asked, do you think human trafficking is more important than privacy? Like, it's like, I feel like the media is throwing out these words. I mean, the politicians are throwing out these words, and then the media is sort of picking them up and saying, talking to people and saying, well, yes, of course, like human trafficking, I want to catch the human traffickers, but we're not thinking about the bigger picture. And so I think it's really important that Tim Cook has come out and said, let's all have a discussion about this. Let's make sure we all understand what we're talking about.
This is how the game is played politically. Every time we've seen an erosion in civil liberties, it comes not because everybody says, yeah, it's great to make a police state. The answer is usually something like, well, we need to be safe. We need to stop bad people, and so we're going to create this, but we'll be judicious with it. But if you look at the history of these kinds of tools, they always trickle down to the lowest levels of law enforcement over time, and they're used in ways that, even as scrupulous as you might expect the high-level FBI team that's working on this investigation to use it, it's going to be used by people for in law enforcement lower down in unscrupulous ways. And if you look back at 9/11, that's a good example. There was a huge erosion in civil liberties after 9/11 because people were scared, and essentially we traded a lot of civil liberties in order to give power to law enforcement because we were afraid of another terrorist attack. And it's actually taken 15 years for a lot of those provisions and things like the Patriot attack to expire and not be reauthorized when we realized what we had done. And that's sort of what's going on here. Law enforcement, the Justice Department and the FBI, they want as much power as they can possibly get to do their job. The challenge is that who is there to check that argument? Who is there among senators, members of the House of Representatives? The politicians, it's very hard for them to take a stand here and not be accused of being essentially pro the San Bernardino shooters, which is not actually what the dichotomy is here, but politically that's how it's being set up by the FBI and the Justice Department. And it is really brave, I would say, for Apple, and we've seen Google come out with a supportive statement. I think it's pretty brave for them to make those statements, because politically this is a tough one, and it would have been very easy to roll over and say that, we cannot be seen as being, defending anything regarding the people who shot all those people in San Bernardino.
Yeah, it's hard not to be cast in that light when you come out against these kind of actions. Sundar Pichai, like you said, Google CEO, did take to Twitter finally. Like, we were kind of wondering, it had taken a while. There's support from the EFF, support from the American Civil Liberties Union for what Tim Cook kind of spelled out this morning. Waiting to hear from Google. Sundar Pichai said, "We build secure products to keep your information safe. We give law enforcement access to data based on valid legal orders, but that's wholly different than requiring companies to enable hacking of consumer or customer devices and data. Could be a troubling precedent." So at least there's some sort of consensus and alignment there. Of course, Edward Snowden also very vocal about this, and up until Sundar had replied, was kind of like calling into question, like, wow, the silence is kind of deafening here. Why aren't we hearing from them? So it's good to hear from them, and hopefully we're going to hear from some more as well.
Yeah, and I mean, Leo talked a lot about this with Jeff Jarvis on This Week in Google,
and Matthew Ingram, who's on tomorrow.
Yes,
Tech News Today.
And Steve Gibson talked about the security aspects of it. And in some ways, I feel like it's over my head, all of this. I feel like I need a law degree to really talk about this. But what about just the idea of a warrant? Like, if you compare, if we're talking about keys and we're making that comparison between, a key in a house, what about like a warrant? If I for cause someone could search my house, where does that come in? Why can't someone just get, why can't they say, I want to have a warrant to search this phone?
The big change happened in the post 9/11 climate. You saw a lot of telecom companies allowing the government to sort of tap their lines and intercept internet and phone communications. And as a reaction to that, and that was all based on court orders or based on they have the FISA court that would give orders to do wiretapping. And there's some stuff that's of questionable legality, and some of it that was absolutely legal. But Apple and Google both made the move to do this full disk encryption, at least on some of their products. And Apple, it's on all of their products at this point, basically, especially all the iOS products. The idea there is that Apple doesn't have the key. There is no second key. You have the key with your password in your device, and Apple can't be compelled to unlock your private stuff because they don't have a key. And that was built on purpose because there was an anticipation that the government was going to ask that that companies be able to unlock those devices, and they didn't want to be put in a position where they could read your data. And that's not just the United States government. It's not just the FBI. We're also talking about regimes all around the world, including oppressive regimes that want to get information about people, let's say in China or in Iran or other places, who want to get access to data for people who are seen as subversive by that local government. So there's some bigger issues at play here. And then you throw in the other piece of it, which is once there's another key, other people could have it too. Not only could it be locked up where the right people at Apple could have it, but the wrong people at Apple who just want to look through famous people's data, they would have access to that key potentially. And criminals could find those keys or other, access that back door, and they could have access to it. So, basically Apple and Google wanted to wash their hands of the whole thing and say, look, your data is yours. We don't want to know what it is. It's all up to you. And that frustrates, I understand why that frustrates law enforcement, but it's one thing to use court orders to access accessible information. And as Sundar Pichai said, it's another thing to try to use the courts to get tech companies to insert insecurities in products so that they have access to those insecurities.
Yeah, especially when you consider the fact that if that, let's say backdoor, Tim Cook called it a backdoor. I don't know if that necessarily qualifies as a backdoor specifically because it's whatever. But that's basically exists on, let's say, 7% of iOS devices, because these are only iOS devices that are iOS 7 and below. And I think just based on Apple's numbers for February of this year, I think that's like 7% of all devices. So that specific vulnerability, or let's say that specific way around things, would only apply to 7%. You take it over to Android and Google, which is obviously the other big player in this field. Yes, they've got full disk encryption since Marshmallow. Marshmallow is only 1.2% of all users. So potentially, if this happened, this could then be applied to some degree to all, 98.8% of Android devices, let's say. And that becomes a much wider net of potential. So yeah, I have to imagine they're all really focused on making sure that their hands are clean at this point, so they don't even have to deal with this because, man, this is crazy.
Well, the other discussion that Jeff Jarvis and Leo had was about other countries. Like, there's a lot of iPhones in China. What about places where there's not a democracy? Like, let's say we all trust our government not to use these back doors, but they're selling these phones in a place where who knows what to trust. So, what do you think about that?
There's history here too, where when the United States has asked for access to certain things from these tech companies, China is watching, as one example, and lots of countries are watching, and is prepared to make those same requests if it gets to that point. And that we've seen that actually bear out in the last few years. So absolutely, this is not just about an American tech company with trying to give information to its government or trying to resist giving them that information. This will roll out. These are all multinational companies. These products are all over the world. And, yes, absolutely. If Apple has a system with a back door that a government can get access to, that means the Chinese government can get access to it for its customers, for its citizens, and Apple's customers in China. And that is... that is something, that is adding complexity here. This is not just about one country. This is about everywhere in the world. And once that key exists, every government and law enforcement agency in the world is going to want to have access to it.
So
Absolutely.
what happens next?
Boy, if I knew that, I would really have something. I think this is going to be appealed. I'm not quite sure whether this is the Central District of California magistrate. So it's possible that it could be appealed to the federal judges in the Central District of California. I don't know if it goes straight to the full judges. The way that these districts work is that there are magistrate judges and then there are full Senate approved judges that all sit in these different districts, and then the Ninth Circuit would cover the appeal. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, I believe, would cover it because that's for the West Coast. So it's possible that what we're going to see here. The question is there going to be a stay? Or is Apple going to be forced basically to deliver on this? If there's a stay, then this gets delayed potentially for quite a while because you could have a series of appeals through the Ninth Circuit up to the Supreme Court on the constitutionality and the legality of this, especially since it's got this strange writ from the 18th century that's being called on here, that's essentially, depending on how you read it, a kind of carte blanche for judges to order things and for law enforcement. So it could be a long process. I think I'm not a legal expert either, but I know enough about the way the federal court system works to say that this could have multiple waves of appeals. And it's entirely possible that, what we're really going to be waiting on is whether somebody thinks that this is questionable enough to have a stay so that Apple doesn't have to do it while this is being argued. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is actually a fairly liberal liberal court. It wouldn't surprise me if they, at the very least, say that it's likely that they might overturn this and put a stay on it, but who knows? I've definitely seen people suggest that this could just be a thing that goes all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's definitely it's interesting. I feel like it's not about San Bernardino. It's really just about our civil liberties, and I think this will have an effect on them for a long time to come. So It's interesting. Well, after the break, what happens when your boss is data mining you? But first, let's take a minute to thank ZipRecruiter, the sponsor of this episode. Let me throw a number at you: 7,064,346. It's a big number. That is the amount of resumes you can search with ZipRecruiter. Also, ZipRecruiter lets you post a job description just once and then distribute that post everywhere. They're always adding new job boards. You can post your job to all the leading free job boards or the paid job boards for an additional fee. Plus, ZipRecruiter lets you take advantage of integrated social network posting to reach job seekers on Facebook and Twitter and Google+. ZipRecruiter lets you embrace the mobile job seeker. Start with mobile optimized pages that look great on any screen. The result is more visitors to your job and more applicants. Posting jobs in one place isn't enough to find quality candidates, and short staffing leaves little time to post to dozens of job sites. Thanks to ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 100+ job sites with one single click and be instantly matched to candidates from over nearly 6 million resumes. Just post once, and within 24 hours, watch your candidates roll into ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. ZipRecruiter has been used by over 400,000 businesses, and you can try it now for free. Getting the right people is so important for your company. Dan, a happy ZipRecruiter client, said the hardest part about running a business when you need to hire is that you have to spend extra time recruiting while you're short-staffed. But with ZipRecruiter, I've gotten quality candidates within 24 hours of posting a job. ZipRecruiter's website makes this process so much faster by letting me manage candidates in one place. Thank you, Dan. Today, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. And we thank ZipRecruiter for their support of Tech News Today. Continuing in the vein of our privacy
of the
at risk.
super cheery privacy stories.
The Wall Street Journal reports that companies are they're mining our data in order to study the health practices of workers for medical insurance purposes. And many of us don't even know what information they're using or what they're doing with it. The companies are using wellness firms to collect our data and use it to lower health care costs, but at what cost to us? It's a bit scary. I mean, they're connecting our shopping data with our health data. They know when women stop using birth control pills, and so they know they're about to get pregnant. Like all this information that you don't necessarily. I mean, it's one thing that when you agree to say to what information people have on you, but I think that these things are so new that they're not agreeing. They don't really know what information is out there.
Yeah, I guess the trick here is how does an employer use that information? Like I would imagine that if an employer, Well, I guess it depends on the employer, but let's say, they discover have info on that someone has a certain type of condition, and they don't want that person on staff anymore because of that for whatever reason. Like, they couldn't necessarily get rid of that person based on the condition, but that could be an alert, a flag to them to find another reason to get rid of them, so that they're ejected, I suppose. Just the kind of thought around big data and everyone's access to it, and just what happens when all of that data, all of this information that we're putting out and spilling out onto the internet, and through our jobs and through our laptops and all this kind of stuff, just gets crunched and becomes a wealth of information that maybe didn't exist for, let's say, our employer or whoever it happens to be, and decisions are made around that. I don't know if everybody knows that that's happening.
And your employer has access to your email. So
right. Well,
even though the way the Wall Street Journal report here is that it's not that the employers get an email alert when you go off your birth control pills, but you do. And if all your alerts come to your employment email address, then your employers can read your email. And again, it depends on the employer. Most employers probably don't read your email. But, if you've got an unscrupulous employer who is, maybe is cruising to lay people off and is finding out that there are people who are planning to take maternity leave, and they could use this information. It's true. I mean, big data is great. Big data has a lot of advantages, but we were just talking about the privacy issues with court orders and things like that. At some point, if you've got all of your personal data in a database somewhere, that means that it is now collated and ready for somebody to read and take, and that could be an unscrupulous person, it could be your boss, it could be the government, and that seems, that's the trade-off, right, of having all of this personal data, is you can get power from that data. I mean, it really is great, or it can be creepy and weird, like that story about how Target could anticipate people being pregnant based on what products they bought.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yahoo is making some big changes to its content verticals by eliminating a number of its digital magazines, food, health, parenting, makers, travel, autos, and real estate. As well, Dan Tynan, who's the editor-in-chief of Yahoo Tech, is being laid off, and Yahoo Tech staff, including former New York Times columnist Dave Pogue, is going to be moved to Yahoo News from Yahoo Tech. Now, Yahoo Tech was kind of, when it was launched a couple of years ago, was really kind of launched on the foundation of a tech site for people who aren't necessarily techies, let's say, kind of a stripped down. Is this kind of, this is an admission of many things, because Yahoo has a lot of problems right now. And Jason, actually, full disclosure, you've written for Yahoo, so definitely, feel free to give your insight on this. But is this an admission that, I don't know, that starting with the tech side of things, that wasn't a good strategy, that doesn't actually fly?
Yeah, it's funny. I wrote a handful of articles, actually space articles for Yahoo Tech, so they weren't tech articles at all. And I appreciate Dan Miller, my editor there, for letting me put space journalist on my resume now, which is pretty awesome. But, is there an audience who is not a tech enthusiast who wants to read about tech? I actually believe that audience does exist. And the problem is the internet is really, and the web especially, it's kind of poorly serves those people. The web in general, I think, poorly serves people who are not enthusiast audiences. The general interest, where Yahoo may not be the right place for it. It turned out not to be the right place for it. But, people used to read the newspaper, and they would read articles about technology in the newspaper, even though they weren't ever tech fans, and they would pick up some things about technology. And I think that's sort of what they were going for here, is using the massive traffic on Yahoo's homepage to drive stuff into the content area. And that it was not a bad idea, I think. But the problem is just the web doesn't work that way. And I don't know, maybe you end up going to the New York Times and reading the tech section on the New York Times if you want to read about tech things and you're not a particularly tech savvy person, or the Wall Street Journal. Maybe those are places there. But I do also think, because, the announcement of Yahoo Tech got poo-pooed by all the people who work at tech sites. But their goal was never to be The Verge or Engadget or Gizmodo or CNET. Their goal was never to be that. And that was wise, because they were never going to be that. But I do have to wonder, If you're somebody who's mildly interested in a topic or doesn't know you're interested in it, but would like to keep up to date on the biggest developments in that area, how do you do that? Because like I read comic books and I like them, but I'm not going to go read a comic book website every day. It's just never going to happen. And so as a result, I'm basically ignorant of what goes on in that field that I'm mildly interested in. I guess in the end, I have to say it, you do come back to things like BuzzFeed or the Huffington Post, or traditionally like the New York Times or the Washington Post or something like that. That is just we're about everything is the only other place for that. And Yahoo is sort of trying to do that, I guess. And, maybe they would have had some more success in the long run, but they are, that is a company with a lot of problems, and they don't want to spend money on a big staff of tech editors. And I totally understand that.
Yeah. So are you saying that the web is really best for niche audiences, for small audiences, yeah. That makes sense.
It totally is. It's really great. If you're somebody who, we all grew up thinking we were the only person in the world, or us and our friends were the only people in the world who liked some obscure thing. And you get on the internet and you find out that there's tens of thousands of people who also like that thing. That's so great. And the people band together and you can create publications, basically websites that are dealing with those people. And it's like got a bigger circulation than your hometown newspaper, essentially. That's awesome. But what we have, especially given that the web is free and generally ad-driven, is you get a lot of niche websites. And I think that's incredibly powerful. But it does make you ask, is there ever anything for people who are not that excited about a subject but just want to know what's going on at a higher level? And the web, I think, has maybe not been as good at that as at the niche programming level.
I appreciated what Yahoo Tech was trying to do, but anytime I ever went to the site, I actually got confused looking at it because it was just like it was this very strange design. It was like a wall of blocks with images and article names and whatever. And it was like, if I was going there in like a casual sort of sense, if I was the target audience, based on what they were setting out to do, I'm not sure that I found what I was looking for, going there. I was more confused than anything.
Cutting edge, right? Way more cutting edge than somebody who wants a casual tech site would ever want. You want something that looks very simple.
Very easy to go in and pick apart the information and go, that's what I'm here for. That particular article right now. Now, this is, obviously just one aspect of this. Yahoo, during their earnings call, said they're focusing on 4 content areas. That's news, sports, finance, lifestyle. And now there's confidential Yahoo data that was leaked to the information that shows that in 2015, Yahoo homepage traffic fell 16.5%. Yahoo Mail dropped 11.5%. Yahoo Search fell almost 9%. And time spent on all of these services down anywhere between 18 to 25%. So Yahoo just by and large having issues. The focus is necessary, but man, they've focused a lot and it just doesn't seem to be working. So I don't know.
No more good news for Yahoo. It's interesting. I also think that we depend on the things that we're not passionate about. I think we depend on our friends and family and our social networks for those things. And so that leads us to our next story about Facebook. Instant Articles, the experiment that Facebook started last year, will open to all starting April 12th. Instant Articles started with big publishers as a way to have their articles load faster in that narrow window that is our attention span. So they thought people were clicking on articles. It took too long to load, so they'd go find something else, which is probably true. Now, starting April 12th, everyone with a web page to link to will have this capability. So other websites, other publishers, if you have a blog, you can all be part of Instant Articles, which I guess is maybe the new Yahoo.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, they say, and Facebook does say publishers of, quote, all sizes, which could, mean a person with like a Medium or a Tumblr blog. Although it sounds like Facebook is kind of not necessarily coming all out and saying that. They're really kind of keeping it focused on publisher and not individual. But it doesn't seem like it's outside of the stretch of ability. So.
As a publisher, Jason, does this excite you to be on Facebook? Instant Articles?
Well, it benefits Facebook a lot because what they're trying to do is make it easy for you to stay in the Facebook app and read articles from elsewhere. And they sort of have their own little markup language variation on HTML, and it renders in the browser, and it's a little like Flipboard. It's a little like Apple News. Google also has an initiative to do fast page loading in the browser. So, it's good for Facebook. I always look at stuff like this because Facebook has an incredible amount of power because of its traffic. And the question is, can I benefit from being inside Facebook? Is that money that is going to Facebook, attention that's going to Facebook, or is it something that benefits me and my business and the stuff that I do? And I think that's always the question, because Facebook's providing the platform here. But it's an interesting idea that people love using Facebook, and their view into the internet is Facebook, in the same way that maybe people's view into the internet used to be America Online back in the 90s. Then this is a way for you to be in Facebook instead of opening a web browser or switching out into a web view of your article. And if that makes people like happier and more likely to click on your content, it's potentially a lot better. Yeah.
One fear that publishers seem to have about this is that it makes clicking into a particular article easier, let's say, faster, and that's part of the reason that Instant Articles is what it is, to kind of speed up your experience inside Facebook, and of course give Facebook more access to the things that you're publishing. But it might actually not in the long run increase any, your let's say your readership on your site, because there's no click through beyond that, right?
It's like the Roach Motel.
It's kind of like you're inviting them into your story within the Facebook walls, but that's not the same as inviting them into your story on your site, where then they kind of click around and find their way around other, stuff that you're publishing elsewhere. So who knows, how valuable that's going to be.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it does feel a little bit like the Roach Motel. You remember those commercials? Roaches go in, but they don't come out, kind of thing. Like you don't, or like the mall. Like that's how the mall is set up, like to just confuse you, and you get in there and you can't figure out how you get out, so you just buy more stuff. I mean, that's what it feels like. And it's interesting today seeing Tim Cook come out and really say like, hey, look at our civil liberties. Everyone wake up and look at this. Meanwhile, Mark Zuckerberg is coming out and saying, let's create more of this walled garden, which is beneficial to publishers. Yes, you'll get more eyes on your words, and that's awesome. But it's still this garden that he's creating to keep people in and out of the rest of the world. So, or the internet, which to some is the world. Sometimes it feels like the world.
Feels like the world to me.
And you mentioned Google's AMP project, which is, coming soon too. And they're not really competitors either. Publishers can use both and will and should.
Yep.
Yeah, in fact, publishers are going to end up, one of the problems is that there's no standard here. And so publishers are going to end up having to build a Facebook Instant Articles template, and they're going to do an AMP template, and they're probably going to do an Apple News template, and who knows what else. And it's just kind of a pain in terms of the development aspect of it. But all of these vendors feel like they want to do their own thing a little bit and kind of move away from the standard. And the web is always there in the background, but all of them want to do something that's sort of web plus, and they're not working together on that.
Right. And finally, today's stories have been, heavy, to say the least. So let's lighten things up a tad and take a look at Leap Motion's new, I know it's not, it is Oreo. Is it Oreo?
Oreo. Not like an Oreo, but
like
Oreo.
I saw that, I'm like, no, it's not a cookie. No. But there you go, Orion. There we go. It lost the end. Orion hand tracking capabilities. This is gesture control, basically, for VR. And super cool. It's all about kind of like articulation. As long as your hands, you got your VR goggle on, as long as your hands are in view, it can articulate your wrists and your hands and your fingers and your joints. So you can close your fist. And it's basically, transfers the motions that you do in real life with your hands into controls, and you see it all act out in front of you. And actually, Kara, if you scroll down a little bit more, there's video of it in motion here. This is kind of a demonstration of playing around with a bunch of boxes. Skip maybe a third of the way into there, and you can kind of see them kind of picking up, manipulating the boxes, drawing them. And this is all done. I mean, this is cool. This is the future right here.
I'm sure
I want to see this.
There's some way we can talk about this violating our privacy, right?
You want to turn this into a downer, don't you?
I don't want it to look at what my hands look like on the inside.
I don't know.
Now in the future, the government will get a court order to find out if you've been making angry gestures in your house.
Right.
And then they'll say, oh, that person is a pre-criminal because they seem very. I know it's cool. It would be even better if the demos involved a dog. But it's still pretty cool.
Eventually, dogs or cats will be included. Or if employers could see, that maybe you have carpal tunnel, and, they can make judgments based on that. Yeah, it's going to happen. All right, coming up, no screen is too small for Pong. But first, let's take a minute to thank the sponsor of this episode. That is Epson. Epson's revolutionary EcoTank line of printers for home and for office introduce a new age in printing. And this is really cool. It's the new EcoTank ET4550. It's a wireless, all-in-one printer. Doesn't use ink cartridges. Instead, it features there on the side, you can kind of see it down there, an innovative refillable ink tank. You just pop that lid, fill each of the colors with the appropriate ink, and you're off to the races. It comes with enough ink to print up to 8,500 pages. That's equivalent to about 50 ink cartridge sets. You're loaded, you're ready to print, and oh, by the way, you can print for up to 2 years with that supply, which is kind of crazy. Powered by Epson's leading-edge precision core technology, delivers high speed, excellent vivid colors, laser-quality black text, plus auto two-sided printing. There's a 30-page auto document feeder, and easy wireless printing from tablets and from smartphones. All EcoTank printers deliver an unbeatable combination of convenience and value with ultra-low-cost replacement ink bottles. And so now you have the freedom to print without running out of ink. How cool is that? Visit Epson.com/EcoTank today to transform the way your home, your office, or work group prints. For the best combination of ease and value, turn to the new Epson EcoTank printers. That is epson.com/EcoTank. And we thank Epson for their support. Epson, exceed your vision. All right, TNT Fan of the Day is up next.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was busy playing Pong on my watch.
By the way, the March of Jasons continues, and this was totally unintentional with the TNT Fan of the Day.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Jason, yes. TNT's Fan of the Day is Jason Harris at Dudley228 on Twitter. He sent us this picture saying, this is one of the ways I watch TNT.
That works.
Yeah, it's nice. We get the bigger setup.
Yeah, that's how we like it.
Bigger screen in the setups. Mm-hmm. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup and post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, Facebook. Use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT and we will find it.
All right, you were locked into your watch there because you were playing Pong and you couldn't pull yourself away.
I can't stop.
The Apple Watch screams sophistication. As such, it demands a sophisticated game of Pong. Many have come before it, but until now, no game of Pong was worthy of discussion on Tech News Today. That is, of course, until now, a tiny game of Pong includes an endless arcade mode, classic playoff, where two players go head-to-head against the game itself, all on your watch. So the question needs to be asked, do we need to play games on our watch, yes or no?
No. What do you think, Jason Snell?
No.
First of all, I don't even ever really like using the digital crown on my watch, and this requires that.
I can understand why they made that a requirement because it's there. You might as well use it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it was in the old school days.
In the olden days, yeah. But no, I mean, it'd be cool if I could play with you, Jason, if we were playing against each other.
Even then, I'd rather play something more interesting and not on my Apple Watch. If I could, it's a cool tech demo and it's a cool idea. But yeah, the Apple Watch is at its best when it is just something you glance at and then move on with your life. And I have one and I wear it every day and I really enjoy it. But focusing time on the watch and holding your wrist up and all of that is just. That's not what it's for. That's not what it's good at. So it's a cool tech demo, but I'll play Pong on my iPhone instead, maybe.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should. I know for Android Wear, I've seen so many hey, check it out. We put Windows on your Android Wear, and it's like a fully operational version of Windows or the Commodore 64, whatever it happens to be. That's not saying that it's the ideal place for it, but people just kind of proving that you can. You'll never actually want to do that. But I guess with Pong, something like that, I suppose it's a little bit more playable, than a Windows operating system is usable.
I mean, I just downloaded it today, but I might. If I'm bored, you never know what I would do when I'm bored.
Yes, when I'm that bored.
Well, Jason Snell, thank you so much for joining us today. You are a podcaster. You are a journalist. Your site is Six Colors. What else have you done recently that you'd like to tell us about?
I've got some tech podcasts at relay.fm. Liftoff is the space podcast, speaking of me talking about space stuff. And then I've got Upgrade and Clockwise. And then over at theincomparable.com, you can get a lot of pop culture podcasts. We talk about TV shows. We've got a podcast where we play Dungeons and Dragons. We've got a game show podcast where we play all sorts of crazy, fun games that are very entertaining. There's lots of stuff over there. So, that's pretty much it. Writing stuff for Six Colors and doing lots of podcasts.
Well, we are super thrilled to get you on today, Jason Snell. Thank you so much for coming on once again, and we will have you back soon.
Thanks. Roll on. Week of Jason's. Yay.
We'll see what we can do about tomorrow. Take care. All right. Tomorrow's guest will not be a Jason, at least not that we know of yet. It'll be Matthew Ingram from Fortune. Looking forward to that. TNT records live every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 12 a.m. UTC at twit.tv/live. You can be a part of the show always by emailing us at tnt@twit.tv, or you can leave us a short voicemail, 260-TNT-SHOW. You can find us on Twitter. The show is at Tech News Today TV.
There was lots of chatter in the chat room about our discussion, about the legal aspects of all the Apple stories. So if you want to join in that kind of discussion, join our chat room, watch live, and participate. Yeah. And we love to see you there. Or you can subscribe to our show at twit.tv/TNT. All the ways to subscribe are there. You can also subscribe to the Twit newsletter at twit.tv/newsletter. And if you want to talk to me directly on Twitter, I am at Megan Morrone.
And I am at Jason Howell. Thanks to our technical director, Kara Cole, and all the folks here who help us produce this show every single day. Thanks to you, as always. We will see you tomorrow. Bye, everyone.